Boards. Boards games, boards games, it's what we're talking about. Boards games, boards games, I'm not gonna shout. We are starting off this streaming with a little bit of singing. And over there, you're going to hear from us with my new guest who's Amadeus. Amadeus plays the piano. Amadeus may be someone you know. We are going to talk about music in the background. When you play a game, you might want to hear some funky sounds or something atmospheric. We will talk about that. We will maybe not talk about the snacks that might make you fat. Or maybe we will, I don't know. We've not established what our brilliant thing is. Boards, games, and background music, it's what we're talking about. Boards, games, and background music. I'm not gonna shout. Hey, good morning, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
And I hope that everyone is having an excellent day. And hello, Alan in chat. I love how Alan changed her name to be Alan in chat because there was someone that I have on stream every couple of weeks called Alan Paul. And so it's like, okay, Alan Alton versus Alan Paul. So now it's Alan in chat. But maybe for my 200th episode, Alan will join us again because Alan has joined, I think, me on screen for like 1 minute for one show and the entire thing for another show where we talked about programming, which is Alan's speciality. But I am, of course, Bez, and it is bedtime in New Zealand. And so out of, to respect all the people from that part of the world, it is the busy bedtime board game bladder. And coming up today, we are talking about background music with Amadeus. And I'm excited to have you on. I was saying before the show started, this is my first show, like with someone who is not part of the board game world and also not someone that I already know. Because I've had Chris on, who I know from real life. You're like the first person who I just got to sort of know through Twitch. I watched you. It's like, yeah, beautiful music, beautiful piano playing. And I just enjoy it, kind of going in and listening to these serene tones and, amazingly skilled finger work. And then coming in and listening to this and then thinking, hey, you know what? It would be great to have some of these talented musicians to come on and chat about music and something that relates, because every creative medium, whether it's background music playing or how you're inspired by something or the act of creation, there's so much connectivity. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, most certainly.
So why did you agree to come on? And do you want to introduce yourself quickly to those who don't know you?
I can do that. So, hey guys, hey Ellen in chat. I'm Amadeus. I would say I am a musician. Not doing it as a full-time job though. Currently, I'm streaming on Twitch mostly, where you found me, Bez. About 3 to 5 times a week due to Corona and everything. I got a little bit more time on my hands. And I come from a classical background in music. But after a while decided to go a bit off rails and also do background music for audio plays for 1 or 2 smaller video games, stuff like that. And I was excited when you asked me about talking about background music because it's interesting to talk about music with someone who may not, like, at least at a high amateur or professional level, being into making music themselves. And see where this goes.
And I have dabbled a wee bit in music playing in the past. Like, it's possible that whilst I'm up in Glasgow, I might actually do some small streams, because for actually quite a while, even before lockdown, I was saying to someone how I was feeling quite frustrated with not performing since I came to London several years ago. Because in Glasgow, there's such a fantastic, vibrant music scene with the open mic people, and and I did play the I played the keyboard in a piano style manner as part of a band, actually, and as part of a different band I played the second one was more punk, so it was very loose, and I played a bit of drums and trumpets and keyboards and whatnot. And it's just a lot of fun, kind of, once you're at a level where you can express yourself and you can improvise. I'm like, you know what, if I just improvised on the piano for an hour, maybe that would be fun. And I don't know, someone from Glasgow actually ages ago said, oh, if you wanted, we could sort of set up something where it was a live stream. But back in those days, I was like, oh, how would you even do that? But because of this, I set up the live stream just to talk, because it's so needed for having anyone do anything socially.
Yes.
And Alan says there must be board games themed around music, surely. And yes, there are. And I know that one of them that I played at Essenspiel 2019, it's a new game. I'm struggling to remember the name. Jason Hodgson bought a copy. I actually kind of helped connect people and sold at least 2 copies of their game. But yeah, we're not here to talk so much about board games themed around music, although there are quite a few. Just more what's going on in the background. And and Alan brings up a terrible, terrible pun. What about pandem music, where a piano on St. Pancras Station is the source of a new outbreak? Oh, that's terrible. Are you familiar with Matt Leacock's Pandemic cooperative game?
I'm not. Is it the one that they also ported to be a mobile app that kind of went through the roof?
I think the mobile app was a totally separate thing, but it happens to have the same name. In Pandemic, the board game, you're trying to stop the pandemic, whereas in the video game, you're trying to be the pandemic. So in the board game, you are a bunch of people going around the world trying to say, okay, we are stopping the pandemic. And I know one of my friends was like, oh, why would you play this right now? But it's a game about kind of taking control over something that is really a difficult spot. So sometimes, anyway, let's talk about brilliant things. Brilliant things. What's a little thing which is brilliant? So, we already chatted about houseplants last weekend, and Amadeus and I, what would you like? Would you like to talk about watering cans? Or just...
Why not? Why not?
Yeah.
Well, in the end, watering cans it's kind of related to houseplants, really, but it's like a small thing that, at least if you got some houseplants, you probably do have a watering can. It's just something that a tool to care about something, I'd say. So you get something specifically for taking care of something in your house on a rather daily or weekly basis. At least I hope so.
I like that.
I know my first few plants would like to differ, but they died horrible deaths. But yeah, it's great to spend time to get something to put work into other things blossoming in your flat.
Oh, and I like this. It's kind of a tool to help you take care of things. And it's about, obviously it's lovely to give care to people, to plants, to your pets, care to the world around you and nature itself, and care to the environment, and care to, hopefully, taking whatever steps we can to help offset the inevitable global warming that's going to ruin us all. eventually. Hopefully, let's delay that by as much as we can. But, if we've got a tool to help you take care of things, and that's such a wonderful way to put it, when we've got maybe those watering cans or maybe even other tools like around us. And if anyone in chat wants to suggest other tools, and now you're just spouting random Monopoly funny. That's just, yeah. Yeah, if you want to share why you think that watering cans are brilliant, then please feel free to do so. Or, of course, feel free to share what are some of your recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights, recent highlights. I played 4 games of Micro Muckle last night. I was playing solo, I was doing a bit of streaming, and I scored 33, 38, 35, and then 38 again. And I don't know whether that's particularly good because I've only just started playing it, but hopefully after a while, maybe other people will. I've been changing the rules of this words game. This is Micro Muckle version 2, where you've got 16 letters to turn into a whole bunch of words. You're trying to use all of them that you can, but your longest word is tripled in score. Your second longest word is doubled in score, and every other word you just score for the number of letters in it, if you know what I mean. You do get some wild cards along the way to help yourself, and I feel like I could definitely have broken that 40 points mark if only I'd played a little bit better in my second game. There's a good amount of luck. People who've played any of the other Muckle games will probably be familiar with the way it works. But yeah, that was what I did yesterday. Other recent highlights for me involve just wandering around, chatting with people. I had a lovely conversation with Andy Hopwood, who's a wonderful friend from Birmingham, game designer. They might come on in early December to chat about something we've not really decided yet. We'll decide closer to the time, because sometimes it's just you want a person, do you know what I mean? And it's like, whether we chat about technology or streaming or game design in Birmingham or making abstract games or making games out of wood, these are all things that Andy could talk about, but we will decide closer to the time. And then, yeah, just having a lovely chat about, the fact that, I've said in your chat how I'm going to Thailand, and I'm starting to think about learning the language, and people are like, oh yeah, here's some schools when you get to Thailand that might be able to help you. Thinking about the visa and starting to think about actually getting rid of 90% of my physical possessions, which is going to be quite a big deal. So yes, if you want a bunch of board games that are potentially going to be quite cheap, then I just want to offload them. Then watch this space. And hello, Scott, also from Birmingham, who says Andy Hopwood could talk about anything. I suggest brain surgery or rocket engineering. But what are some of your recent highlights, Amadeus?
Well, board game wise, I'm playing Tabletop Simulator a lot with
Okay.
a group of friends lately. They're not living in the same city, so that's a great way to get together every now and then. And we played a game which name I forgot. It was basically a co-op game. Some of these co-op games I've seen a lot where you kind of explore the map as it goes, as the game goes. You put on new map cards on there, and you try to explore a haunted house of some kind.
Betrayal at House on the Hill?
Oh, that could be. Yes, and at some point, exactly. So at some point, the co-op game turns south, and one of the people sometimes becomes kind of an imposter or the monster or the antagonist of the game. We played this one before, a while ago, like a year ago. And my highlight was being the imposter and being killed in like 2 rounds. So that was a short highlight, indeed. But it was fun.
I mean, that's definitely one of those games that it's a lot more about the narrative than about actually any sense of balance or trying to win.
Yes, exactly. I think so too. Like, it highly depends for me with these games on who you play with, and yeah, all the talking and shit talking that comes with the game on the sides. um,
By the way, just everything's fine. I do want to let you know that I tried to keep this stream PG rated, but an occasional slip up is fine.
I'm
But
sorry.
let me move on to the questionably quick questions, which is the time for anyone to ask anything, as Amadeus is in the hot spot. So, firstly, where exactly are you, and what time is it?
Right now, I'm in my living room in Germany, southwest of Germany. The city is called Saarbrücken.
Saarbrücken.
It's the tiny or the smallest main or state city in Germany. So rather a big village than a city. And it's 11:15 right now in the morning.
So that's the Bavarian section? We've
No,
established my geography is terrible, so
yeah,
please correct me.
mine too though. But before I moved here, I didn't know where Saarbrücken is in Germany. So Bavaria would be in the southeast, the very southeast of Germany, and I am in the southwest on the French border actually. So like half of the south and the west of the state I'm living in is on the French border near Alsace, if that rings any bells for some people.
Now, you said in your bio that your father and mother were really into music, so I wanted to ask you, like, did you feel like you were being almost cajoled into playing the piano? Was it forced upon you, or were you really happy to embrace this?
A lot of people think that my parents kind of chose this for me since they chose my name as well, which always reminds people either of the Falco song or of Mozart.
Yes.
But
I thought it was a joke. I'm sorry. I just assumed, it's one of those names that now no one would pick just because it's Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Everyone would think of that.
yeah, a lot of
It's
people
almost like
think that.
almost like calling your child Einstein. It feels like, okay, that's a lot to live up to. Do you know what I mean?
True that. True that. And I don't think I can. But I think my parents were influenced by some of this. My mother definitely listened to Falco. My father is listening to a lot of classical music. He was kind of the one I think that influenced me most into making music a big part of my life. But they never really forced me into it. I can't say that. We had a piano at our place because my mother was taking piano lessons when she was a child. So she still had like the old piano standing around. And they're like, like the obligatory pictures of me with 3 years old, like putting my hands on the keys. But yeah, I actually started rather late, I'd say, for someone taking classical lessons when I was 8, and I did that after I tried about like 10 different instruments over the year. Every instrument I played for a month, and then after the year I decided which one to go with, and it became the piano.
Wow. I mean, I kind of think of the piano as the simplest instrument in that everything is laid out in the logical order from the lowest note to the highest note, and you can easily play several things at once. Whereas, with a trumpet, just to play one note, or on any brass instruments, frankly, just playing one note can be quite challenging. Do you know what I
Yes.
mean?
I think the piano is like one of these instruments that is most easy to start with because you can produce a decent tone, I mean, your dynamics might be not the best in the beginning, but at least you can put your finger on a key and then it makes a certain sound and it sounds like something. Which also probably made it for me easier to start with it because you see your progress really fast. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I can play something, or I can play a melody that might remind me of something, or that I know from somewhere. Um, and then you have to learn to play with two hands, and then you master that. You
Hmm.
get to somewhere quickly, I think. Whereas with a violin, for example, I tried to do that. You take like a month or probably a year for some people to get a tone out of it that doesn't annoy everyone around you.
Yeah.
um,
And hello, Nicholas, who's already answering questions in chat because Alan was asking if Amadeus is a popular name in Germany, to which Nicholas is saying no. Do you know anyone else called Amadeus?
no, I don't know anyone else. I know there have to be a few people. Like when I was younger, I checked on Facebook to see like if there was anyone living nearby that I could go and be like, "Hey, you're the second Amadeus that I know." But no, I haven't met anyone, and I haven't even met someone knowing someone. So,
Nicholas says for Mozart it was Gottlieb Latinized. I don't know what that means.
so Gottlieb is a German name. It's rather antique as well by now, but it's a bit more popular at least than Amadeus. And Amadeus is Latin and means the same thing as Gottlieb. So it's literally the same name translated into German, which means like
Oh.
love God or the love to God.
Huh.
I think
Deus meaning
Greek.
God, and is that
Yes,
correct?
yes, and
Like
Ama
Deus
or
Ex.
Amada. Yes, yes, exactly.
And Scott talks about lovely wine from Alsace. I don't know if that's a
Hmm.
place near you, if you're familiar
Yes,
with this.
Alsace is a French region that is next to the border where I live. And it's famous for two things. It's wine, like almost every French region, and Flammkuchen, which is kind of a
Oh my
French
gosh.
pizza. Yeah.
I'm all about, yes, the Flammkuchen. You know, you used to be able to get the Flammkuchen in, not all the time, but sometimes in Lidl in the UK.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think it was a very good representation of the authentic Flammkuchen because I have been to Germany. I should say that one of my siblings actually lives long term in Germany now because of their
Oh, nice.
partner with two small children. And these small children can speak three languages: English, German, and Farsi. For because my parents are from Iran, and we've tried to, you know, even though I don't know if there's any benefit, but I can say Man Irani Hastam Vaisme Man Behuze, which means that I am from Iran and my name. I can basically say whatever I want to, but if I started reviewing games, I would probably have a little bit more difficulty doing it in Farsi than in English. But
Hmm.
I know that there's at least one Iranian person in Bangkok that I'm excited to meet. And who knows, maybe when I go there, we will start doing Iranian language reviews together, just so that I can improve my own. At this point, honestly, it's just a way of honoring your parents' culture. That's the way it is for me. But anyway, back to the topic. I know about Pfannkuchen. I also know about pickled herrings.
About what?
Apparently, it's a very big thing from Hermeskyle. I don't know if you know Hermeskyle. It's near Frankfurt Hahn. Like, not near Frankfurt, it's near Frankfurt Hahn, the airport.
Hmm.
So we're very lucky that there's an airport next door to Hermeskyle because it's like just there because it's maybe 100 miles from Frankfurt, but it's also next door to my siblings, partners, parents' village. And so yeah, in Hermeskyle, it's all about these little pickled fish. It's tiny pickled fish.
Oh, yes. Okay, I remember. I think I tried that once. Not my thing. I have to be. I have to be honest.
I know not all German people are the same. And a quick good morning. It's lovely to see you, Alex. And yes, I hope that you're having a good morning. And Alex is also a musician, as you can see from their thing.
Yes.
And they work in a music shop. And they actually wrote me a song for my 100th episode, which I will probably play again next week. Well, you should say next Tuesday is my 200th episode. I'm quite excited.
Ooh,
I'm going to keep
nice.
going for as long as I want. But yes, do you have anything more to say about your name? Because Alan is really asking lots of questions. Would it have been a popular name at some point? Maybe it was popular in Italy.
As Nicholas said, yeah, below that, Amadeo, I think, is the Italian version. I think I know some Brazilian people with that name as well, Amadeo. But in Germany, I think Amadeus was never really a popular name. I think not even Mozart was really called Amadeus a lot. Like there's like a myth surrounding it that it's not even on his birth certificate in that very
Oh, wow!
version.
So it was just Wolfgang Mozart.
No, it was actually I can't recall right now, but it's like such a name. He's got like 8 names or something like that because it was common back then to do that for some reason. But I think Amadeus in that form was not part of it.
Huh. Wow. So this is not a show about Mozart's, of course, and like this is meant to be the parts where we start to get to know you. And so you said that you started studying German linguistics and literature and history. That sounds like an English person studying English. You're just kind of learning more about your own culture. I guess, I mean, then why did you give up? Why did you stop studying?
Well, I wouldn't say I gave up. That always has like this sadly sound to it, or the sad sound. That was like a decision I made over the course of 1 or 2 years. And there were few things influencing it. Like I moved a lot during that time, had some like personal stuff to care about. And I'm super sorry. Okay. And also at some point, I just figured that the institution of a university, at least the way it's organized over here, and the way I experienced it at the universities I was, wasn't the place for me to be in long term. I guess I just like I'm super interested in the topics I studied, and that's why I studied them. And that's maybe was the problem, that I couldn't imagine myself being in a job using that stuff actually.
Yeah, at that point, it's like, what's the point?
Yes, exactly. Like as long as I had fun, and as long as I was interested in a certain topic, I would get into it, and I would be like, I would dig into it and spend hours and hours doing research and getting to the knowledge. But as soon as I was like, someone was like, okay, and now you have to write an essay, 10 or 12 pages about something I don't care about at all. It was really difficult for me to sit down and do that. You could also call that a lack of discipline, maybe. But yeah, I found out that, especially when I started working at the restaurant I work at right now, and I was able to earn some money and at the same time have the time and the energy to put some more work in my music and stuff like that, and all the creative things I do. I found that that's what makes me happy.
And Alex found that apparently this is the full name of Mozart. And also thank you, Alex, for moderating excellently. So apparently Mozart should really be called Johannes rather than Wolfgang. So there you
True.
go. It's almost like the fact that everyone calls me Bez, even though my full name is Behrouza Bahman Shahriori. True story. So Behrouz is my first name, but let's ask the question. So, are you familiar with a meeple? The little wooden pieces, the wooden people. A minute. Let me try and find the game. Sorry. So would you? So a meatball is a. Let me ask you, what are the last 3 games that you played, if you can remember, other than Betrayal?
I also played a game called. Ooh. Oh, one of these. These remind me of Carcassonne.
Yes, exactly. They originated in Carcassonne. And
Ooh.
so these are called meatballs. And the question is, would you rather have a meatball-sized duck or a duck-sized meatball?
I guess it would be a dog-sized meeple, just because I wouldn't want to care about a puppy that is this size. I mean, it gets lost all the time, right? Crawling under the
Hmm.
couch. I mean, I know how it is with these meeples. You know, you open the box and it falls, and you only find half of them, and then years later they reappear. And I don't want a meeple-sized puppy reappear under my couch. So I'd rather have the other the dog-sized meeple and put it somewhere in the flat as decoration, I think.
Oh, it was meant to be a duck, eine Ente,
Oh,
and so this
same
question
there.
is from Aquasulus, who asked it many moons ago, and it's just such a
Mm.
brilliant question that I keep asking it.
Yeah, but with the dog, same thing. It's a very
Mm,
small dog, and I would have to care about it. Like, what would I
mm.
give it? What would it eat?
So, would you consider yourself to be a board gamer?
mm, I think I don't play board games often enough or on a regular basis enough to call myself a board gamer. But I certainly do enjoy board games, and it happens like once or twice a month, I'd say. That if the occasion is right, if I'm with some people and we decide to do something together, then it could be a board game. Yeah.
And sorry, I interrupted you when you were talking about the last couple of board games that you played.
Oh, no problem. So one was how was it called? Well, Carcassonne was among it. Most definitely, I like to play this one with my girlfriend. It's a very heated sessions. um, yeah, because it's such a simple concept. And I like that. If games got a simple concept, it's easy to learn the rules in like 2 minutes. Um, but it's still difficult to master, or like the outcome
Mm,
is different every time. I like that. Um, the other one was Mansions of Madness, I think it was called. Yet again, a co-op game is set in the Cthulhu mythos, where you enter or you roleplay certain characters entering a mansion of some sorts, um, and finding out why it is haunted and how to get rid of it. Um, what I liked about that is that it changes every time you play. It was accompanied by an app, by a
mm.
mobile app.
Oh, so
Um,
yeah, I so this
mm,
came out with two editions, I believe, and
mhm.
the first edition, um, it was one almost games master, so it's one person against everyone else. So one person is almost the aggressor and plays the house, and then everyone else is playing the people going around and trying to beat the house and beat the demons. But then in the second edition, then they created this app, and so it's everyone against one, which is a really interesting way to do it, where you bring technology into the board game.
Yes, it was the first time for me that I saw that. Although the idea, I think, is quite um, like you're likable to have this idea at some point, I guess.
Mm.
But this was the first time for me to experience it, and I didn't think it would work as well as it did, to be honest.
I mean, it's one of the standout examples. I know that Reiner Knizia, possibly in the late 80s even, was integrating technology into board games with this children's game where, and also Top Thief is an example, where it's like pushing the buttons and then it makes noises or it comes up with some random information. But actually, oh, what's that video game that they turned into a board game? You know, that one with people playing against the aliens. Oh, you
Oh, was it
know,
XCOM?
yes, thank you, XCOM. And so XCOM, like that board game and Dimensions of Madness second edition, I believe that these are the two standout examples of
Mm.
technology. And we're going to have Vince Vergonjon on quite soon, who was part of well, it heads up the company that made Chronicles of Crime, so I'm excited to have them talking about it. But let's finish up the questionably quick questions so we can talk about the main topic. But let me ask you to, in as much or as little detail as you would like, go over, so people get to know you, a typical day.
A typical day for me right now is waking up at around 9 or 10. I would like it to be 9, but it's more like 10. Then having a breakfast, my first cup of tea. I also try to go outside on the balcony a bit to get some fresh air. And then at around 11 usually I go live myself. So around the same time as you. I stream for 4 to 6 hours, depending on my girlfriend's schedule, actually. So we live together. She's a teacher, so she comes home at around 3 or 4. Then we usually cook something together, got some time to talk, maybe play some board games, watch a TV show, something like that. And in the evening, right now I either write. I'm trying to participate in the NaNoWriMo, the National November Writing Month.
Yeah, and I get really frustrated by that name. Why is it national? I mean, this is so American-centric, you know? It should be WaNoWriMo. Why? I mean, that's not... WaNoWriMo is just like a... And like then people called it Naga Demon, which is National Game Design Month, which is actually quite a cool name, Naga Demon, because it's Naga is like a water thing, like a Japanese demon. And so that's pretty cool. But NaNoWriMo, sorry, that annoys me. But anyway, good on you for writing, and I hope you come up with something good for it.
Well, I hope I will. I'm behind in words so much because even though I don't work right now because restaurants had to close down due to the lockdown in Germany right now, we'll see how long that goes. I'm like someone old already quitting his job. You know, you just take a lot of things and you put it into your day, and then you've got too much to do. So like preparing my streams and working on the music and everything takes a lot of time as well in the evenings.
And you put up an entire album on Spotify quite recently, which is Apart, and it's quite short. It's beautiful. I mean, it's lovely. I mean, it's too short, but then I guess you can listen to it twice.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you like it. True, we put that up a while ago as a follower goal, I think, or something. Didn't think we would get there, but we did apparently. And yeah, it was also actually recorded in one night back then.
Wow. But you did a bit of production to it afterwards.
Yes. I had to master it a little bit, like set the tone right, because which I didn't know, you have to get a certain level of loudness as well, stuff like that. If you want to release it on Spotify, they've got like a few outlines there that I had to follow. And that was an interesting process. The first time for me doing all that. I was used to just playing your music and that's it.
I mean, it's definitely interesting, like the amount of work that goes into streaming, and I do definitely want to have almost a guest topic as I go forwards. I want to have more, especially with returning people, just saying, okay, let's chat for an hour and a half about streaming. And because you come to it and then you think, oh, it's going to just be putting it up, but then how much marketing do you have to do? How much work behind it? Anyway, as we go into the main topic, which I am going to have to put my foot down if we have any chance of getting through this in the 2 hours that has sort of been dictated to me by some of my viewers. Because feel free to comment, ask questions, like, follow as we move into the main topic. I do want to give a quick shout out to my own Discord, which is here, but yeah. Yeah, people are just chatting about fights, about horses. You can keep chatting about that. I'm not going to engage with that chat. We're going to chat about background music. And so, yeah, how would you even consider background music? I mean, for me, the definition of background music is like the difference between active listening and where the focus of the person is. Like, if I'm walking around, then it's kind of not quite background music because I still have a lot of mind space open to really be listening to this music. Like, if I'm doing exercise and listening to Flower by Moby, I don't know if you know this song by Moby. So
Don't
it's
think so.
like
Maybe.
Green Sally up, Green Sally down, and then it's actually based on this old folk song almost. And so compared to Ringa Ringa Roses, which is an English song where you run round a circle and then there's a playful activity intertwined with it, Green Sally up, Green Sally down, it's about people doing squats as children and then basically seeing how long you can do these squats for. And then this was turned into, you know what Moby's like, kind of bits of a dance track, and then there's a bit where everything drop. There's like little chorus, and then people do this with leg raises, with push-ups, and say, okay, you start up when it says up, you go up. When it says down, you go down, but then you don't ever touch the floor. And during this time, you're really listening to the music, I think. And even though that might not be the main focus of the activity, that is still a thing that you are very heavily focused on. And so for me, it depends if something is to set tone or to kind of be a supplementary bit, but not necessarily take the lead. I guess that's how I would define background music. How would you define it?
Well, the problem is, or the thing I would ask myself is something similar as you. Like, is it in the background, not being in focus, or is it in the background, accompanying whatever it is you do? Is that the same thing? So,
it's like
for
in the
example,
film, you've got background music that's behind the conversation, but then
yes.
you've also got background music where maybe it's a silent scene and someone is running away from, a Halloween scene, there's some monster.
Yeah.
And then like the music might even take the foreground and really be the driving focus.
Yeah. Well, that's, I think, where we have to differentiate between like program. Is it programmatic or program music? Which is a style of music that like video game, movie soundtracks, etc., or soundtracks in general originated from. I wouldn't say they are always background music, right? As you said, like they could be in the foreground. They are still sometimes the main force behind where our emotions in a certain scene, for example, go. It's difficult to define. Actually.
I mean, maybe it's also about what do you intend. Yeah, I mean, I like what Alex is saying in chat, which is it's all about scale. And you see, background music is kind of like audio wallpaper. Film score is too intentional. Like, I mean, you can be really intentional about things. Okay, so I just want to talk about what I talked about before I started, which was with iTunes. You can have these, what they call smart lists. And so one of the things you can do is if comments contains, and then you have a string of letters, and comments contains another string of letters, and comments contains another string of letters, and comment does not contain another string of letters. So then I might say, okay, I have tagged literally all my songs, maybe like 1,000 or so of them, by putting the BPM, and so I'll have like a tag for common time, and then I'll give between 0 and 5 pluses on common time, which is obviously incredibly subjective. Like common time, I mean 4/4. Uncommon time for me is, okay, well, if it's 3/6, that's, if it's like 5/4, that's a lot more unusual than like waltz time. I mean, waltz time, that's a little bit uncommon. Something like 5/4, okay, that's pretty cool. Sometimes I just want to listen to things with weird time signatures. And then, but it's like instrumental. And so if I want background music, it will be like, okay, background instrumental, at least this many pluses, happy, like maybe a couple of pluses, and then it's that kind of smart list generating this set of things, and it'll go through the music, and I'll just have it, okay, generates a smarts list. Now, there is a degree of intentionality with having set up those tags, but there's a degree of letting the computer do its thing and select from these things, and then me maybe swapping it around. And even like, it's interesting how it goes into what you play on your streams, because there's something really interesting about the way that learning and playlists work on Twitch, if you know what I mean, with everyone doing it in a slightly different way, where it's like, okay, people get this many chances to put something up on the list, and then you're letting your audience decide that. And some people use Twitch music as a background thing, and they've just got that on, but some people are actively listening. And it's like, if someone's in a concert, I mean, if someone is at a cafe and there's a live musician, do they always need to be actively listening to it? Or is that background music?
Well, the question of intention, I think, is rather interesting, because I think you can never take that out of the equation, right? Even though it is music you might not be actively listening to, you're putting that out intentionally. And in the best case, I think whoever composed the music or is playing the music right now, if it's a live musician, for example, put some intention in it as well. I think the question is not if there's intention or not. I think the question would be rather, what is your intention? Why are you playing this music, or why are you listening to exactly this kind of music? If you put on a playlist, yeah, like you said, on iTunes or on Spotify, you take that a bit. I think that's the only way to take it out of the equation, right? Because you're not 100% controlling anymore what you're listening to.
I mean, there is almost a little bit of abnegation, even if you listen to an album. I mean, I might be listening to Norah Jones, and maybe I say, okay, I'm going to listen to an entire album by Norah Jones. Let's be honest. I mean, Norah Jones's albums, there might be a common sound to all of the songs. You know, there's going to be soft, gentle vocals. You know, it's probably going to be about loss and love and a little bit twinge of sadness, and it's got a strong instrumental part. But, you know, if I deleted one of the songs from that album, you know, if I made a playlist that was that album with one song removed, I think it'd be hard pressed to say where the break was. Do you know what I mean? Because there's never a strong continuity. And so, really, I can't say that choosing for myself, I'm listening to that album, is definitely a lot of intentionality. It's almost like me choosing to give that control up. It's almost saying, I don't want to have to worry about every single song for every single 3 minutes and a half, if every song is on average 3 minutes and a half. I want to just say, okay, this is something that I'm listening to for the next 70 minutes. And I'm going to choose this to be my soundscape. And then I get that sense of completion that comes from listening to the album.
It also means that you decide to do something along with it, right? So background music, by definition, means that it is in the background of something. May that be a video game or a movie, or might be some of your activities like doing sports or working on something. So I think also choosing a certain playlist, maybe an album or a longer piece of music, or either, for example, a Twitch stream where you know, okay, this streamer will probably going to be up for like 2 to 4 hours, so I'll just set that up in the background and it won't stop. So if you kind of relate this kind of music with the activity you're doing, it also keeps you going, I think. Because like a background needs a foreground kind of thing.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. Like, it's all about where that focus is. Now, let's talk about background music, like in general, like, because there's some people who say, you know, I just want to go through life, just explore. I don't know if you've heard this. I believe that Stan Sakai wrote it in Usagi Ojimbo with one of the characters. So this is a comic. Literally translated, it means rabbit bodyguard. And
Hmm.
it's by an American Japanese person. And I don't know if this is a Japanese school of thought, but it was a Japanese character written by an American Japanese person who wrote that there's um, three styles of music. So the first style of music is the music of the humans, which is like the music that the humans try to create. The second style of music is the music of nature, that you listen to the wind and the sea and you just enjoy what is going on around you. And in the comic, the person says, but more and more we are drowning this out with our own noises, with our city, or I think this is set in feudal times, so it's kind of with the hustle and bustle. And then third was kind of the music of the gods and kind of the spirits, which they say, oh, in this comic, they said, oh, I've never heard it, but I've strained to hear it all my life. And at the end of the comic, okay, so spoiler alert, if you are going, feel free to mute me for 30 seconds. The character dies, basically. And then when they die, they basically say, oh, do you hear that beautiful music? I just hear it's coming. And then like they die properly. But like it's a very small character. It's not like they're a long-term character or anything. So like it wasn't like a big shock or anything. People die anyway. So but this is a beautiful thing, and in some ways people do say, let's listen to the nature a bit more, let's listen to the birds, let's listen to think the wind and things around us when we're having a walk. Maybe we shouldn't always be listening to things on headphones. But how would you counteract that argument? Why is background music a good thing?
Well, I don't think I can counter that for every occasion, but because I most definitely think as well, like at some point, it's a good thing to take a walk and just listen to like nature's music, if you want. To also don't have input to work on, you
Mm,
know. But for example, if I sit inside, if I got a reason to listen to background music, um, I think it can help with a lot of things, mostly emotionally, I think.
mm,
Um, I mean, for example, if you're playing a board game, a certain kind of board game, like for example the Mansion of Madness thing, or anything roleplay related, really,
mm,
um, what you're trying to do is basically get somewhere else in your head or in your headspace, right? You're not really in your living room anymore, listening to nature sound outside. Maybe it's raining, for example, or some birds. You want to be like in that haunted mansion. And
mm.
if you got some background music in that case to accompany that and to put you there emotionally and um, yeah, emotionally,
Yeah, for
in your
sure.
headspace, then
Intensifying that and putting you in a different space. And what you're saying almost makes me think of soundscapes. I don't know if you know the game
mm,
Subterra, but I think that so this is a game in which it's cooperative again, and you're working through a cave, and there's these monsters, and then you're trying to get out of the cave together. And there's this, I think, like a good 2 hour soundscape that they did, which is just these weird atmospheric noises.
mm,
And it's like not, I don't know if you would call it music, although that's kind of getting into what is music, but
mm,
certainly it's not melodic music. Let's call it say that. It's not something where the intention is to add a melody, and it's something where it's transportative almost.
mm,
Something where it's figuratively moving you to a totally different situation. And sure, let's not get into this whole discussion. And like people have talked about here, Alan in chat is saying how they enjoy doing the sad bits when they're working, because maybe they work better when they're sad, and it increases productivity. Maybe it helps you focus. And for some reason, Scott is doing yoga to heavy metal music. I assume that this is just what works for you. So maybe it keeps Scott entertained or occupied. I don't know. But this is really an interesting one. I guess it's almost more of a supporting act than necessarily the background.
It helps you get through.
But other than intensifying the emotion or stopping you getting bored, I guess that's a thing, because if you're cycling and then you want to have some music in your headphones, and maybe that's just stopping you getting bored, as well as, adding to the emotion. Maybe I want to have some music is a drug. Music can energize me, music can sedate me, music can pacify me. And so for sure, playing a particular track, if I play Screamadelica in the morning, I'm likely to be marginally more productive than if I play something super chill, like Vivaldi. I don't know. I know that there's some quite nice upbeat melodies, but it's not like got the pure energy of, yeah. But like, do you have anything else to add on why it's good? And what would you want from good background music?
I wanted to pick up something you said earlier with the soundscapes. They are not melody driven. That kind of triggered me, because I think a lot of good background music stays in the background. Let's say that. Even though someone might, for example, like Scott, might listen to heavy metal when doing yoga. Even he admitted, like, he doesn't know if the yoga is in the or if the music is in the background anymore, or if he's actually listening to the music to do something else while doing that. I think most background music that I found most enjoyable or most competent in staying in the background and at the same time adding something to the whole experience of playing something, for example, is that it has to find a balance between melodic music and also between something like a immersed sound. Right, because I think we are conditioned to listen to melodies. Like, melody is the the most, or the center of attraction for a lot of people for music. Like, if you remember a melody, a catchy tune that might just play on and on and on in your head, you might get distracted, right? Because it's that one, and then you start humming it, and then you start being somewhere else. But at the same time, if it stays too much in the background, if it's just like a soundscape, for example, it might add a bit to the atmosphere, but maybe you also want it to add enough to be memorable, right? Maybe you want to hear that kind of music and go like, oh, that's the music. I think that makes me think of Carcassonne or of Mansions of Madness, if we talk in board games. And I think that to find that balance between being memorable and at the same time not being the center of attention is really, really difficult. And I've seen that with video games mostly, that there is a lot of video games that have amazing soundtracks that I would listen to on my stereo or on my PC while doing something else for hours and hours. But during the game, I was like, okay, this is kind of not fitting the scene, or it doesn't fit there. It just feels a bit weird. That's really difficult to do, I think.
And a quick lots of love to Alan in chat, who's apparently off to an online funeral. I mean, that's hard times. That's the nature of the world right now. But and I guess you'll be catching up later maybe, but always good to see you. And brought up a good point of, I don't know if you know Escape the Dark Castle and Escape the Dark Sector. These are games that are primarily focused on 80s nostalgia, where it's black and white graphics. They almost I would say that a lot of the reason for their success is that they epitomize what's going on in that historical theme, and they have soundtracks that you can even buy on audio cassette, for goodness sake. I mean, I can understand people actually wanting vinyl, but really, audio cassette, that's just kind of, yeah, ridiculous. I mean, that's someone saying, hey, look how hipster we are, almost. But yeah, like there are definitely some games that have something, and there are some games that have Escape, not those ones, but Escape the Temple, where the soundtrack becomes the game. Where in Escape the Temple, the soundtrack plays, and every so many minutes, there's like, okay, now there's like a 30-second increase in pace, and then when it goes, and then when it goes, you have to be in a specific location or you lose a whole bunch of hit points. So it's kind of a way of timing the game because it's a real time game that you play over, I think it's like 10 minutes exactly. And you can play with the timers, but it's more fun if you just listen to the CD or app and you have that pumping through. And for a lot of the time, sure, it comes to the foreground when it's warning you that it's about to finish, but for a lot of the time, it's just there to be a soundtrack. And I like that comment. But yeah, so there's something really interesting there of purpose of these things, and even I'm trying. Oh my gosh, there's that other cooperative game. Some people are going to remind me of by Hvatzel, the other real time one. But yeah, versus having that emotional setting. So there are people trying to do it, and of course, Melodice, which you said, which you linked to, and people have said it in previous times, and anyone can go there and find a game and then say, okay, this is a song that's suitable for this, and maybe you put it in. And if you look up Kitty Cataclysm, I've just suggested a few different songs that have cats in the words, like the opera that's got the people making cat noises and stuff like that. But at what point does it become too foreground and too distracting? I mean, yeah, do you have any suggestions to like talking about pitfalls or like tips for someone trying to put together a background track?
I think so. When I do something like that, I, for example, for the audio plays that I work with some people, I did a soundtrack of 6 pieces, and some of them were played in between to set the scene or set a tone. So these could be actually involve more melody, more music, etc. That kind of sticks or that is kind of memorable. And if I went to the background tracks after that, because you almost always have like both at some point, maybe like even if it's just the title screen, for example, if we talk board games again, that kind of sets the tone before you start to get into the game with the background music. Then a good thing is always to keep it stringent. Is that an English word? I don't know. So that you use the same set of instruments, for example. So it's not too much new information that comes to the player. And that's a good thing to put it in general, to reduce the amount of information that could distract you or that could be the center of your attention while doing something else. And also I try to find like different genres of games maybe or settings. I think always ask for a different kind of music as well, because we are used to certain things in our culture. Like when you play, for example, Mansions of Madness, and you got background music that is super happy, or that kind of reminds you of a medieval market, someone playing bagpipes. I don't know. Then that's weird enough to distract you because it's something unusual. So as weird as it sounds, I guess background music needs to be to some degree a bit boring, in that it doesn't add new stuff to your brain.
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. I mean, you need to have some degree of repetition, and you can sort of see that going on in video game music. I mean, maybe the melodies are a little bit simpler, less, yeah, more constraints. Aquasula
Hmm.
suggests more restrained, maybe more instrumental. I mean, like for sure, any vocals that has meaning, if there's too much information going on, that's going to overload your brain and
Hmm.
attracts attention to it. And so maybe there needs to be almost a paucity of information.
Hmm.
And just in case people are wondering about the game that I was trying to think of, it was Space Alert by Vladimir Vattel, which is another game where there's a soundtrack that actually tells you to do certain things, but at the same time as the computer saying, okay, now this ship is firing, now this thing is happening, you also get this atmospheric noise, which is sort of, so there's in the same, it kind of makes me think of in a board game all the illustrations on the board, right? Because okay, I'm just going to open up Taj Mahal because that's a game that I opened up not too long ago, and it's therefore quite close to me. And like if you look at Taj Mahal, you see you've got information. Whoops! Don't let that fall down, please. Oh, sorry about this. Um, you've got some information which we have to see ourselves. There we go. So you need to see where the circles are, where you place things. You need to see that these are different to these ones because you put icons. You need to see where the broad colors are. But within each of the colors, there's an intricate design that I think you can see. And that is completely background illustration. It's not part of the essential parts of the game, but
Hmm.
the parts of the and so in some ways, as soon as you start up a soundscape, you've got the foreground information plus the background information, and it can be aligned to here. It's like they could have made this game and just made it flat colors, and you could have still played it, and it wouldn't be as appealing to see on the board, but it would have worked. And so why not, with the same notion, just have a bit more going on in the soundtrack? Just because we don't need a soundtrack doesn't mean you don't want something. And if you have nothing, sure, that might be a deliberate choice. I mean, obviously, there's party games where they have text on a solid color, and that is all they've done, and that's very deliberate. But why not have that be a deliberate choice? If you have the budget to do it, then yeah, and maybe you don't notice it, but because Scott's, if I'm assuming Scott is also a fan of Taj Mahal, brilliant game, but maybe you don't notice it when you're playing it, but your brain does subconsciously, and maybe that's like something to do with background music. It doesn't have to be something that you even consciously take in, just something that adds to it. I mean, what would you think about like jazz, where there's quite a bit of variation in melodies?
Whew. Um, I think I just try to think of art that got jazz in the background, and the only ones I think I remember are movies where jazz was in the soundtrack. But in that case, it was either a movie about jazz or or it added a certain rhythm to the whole movie. Um,
Hmm.
just try to I
It's a
don't know
fair
if you've seen
point.
Birdman.
Still
Um,
not seen it.
no spoilers here, but like the camera is like following one character, and there's someone sitting outside the place where almost the whole movie takes place. Someone on the street playing the drums, like a street artist, and these drums are it's kind of jazzy drums, and these drums are in the soundtrack the whole time. But they certainly influence the way the movie, or I perceive the movie a lot, because um again, like background music is something you are used to maybe, and that you don't have to pay attention to anymore, but still maybe on a subconscious level influencing you. And jazz, for most people at least, is centered all around um, playing with your
Surprise?
expectations and doing something differently.
Hmm.
Um, Again, not all jazz. I mean, there's also like this typical jazz that people might connect to being in the elevator somewhere. You know, like
Hmm.
this typical smooth jazz, um, and that I think would work as background music. But like new jazz, if it's not deliberately put somewhere to have a certain effect on the player or someone listening, I think it doesn't really work as background music.
I mean, definitely, I agree with you that it can shift the perception. I don't know if you've seen Belleville Rendezvous, also known as Triplets de Belleville. It's a film. I can't remember who the director is, but it's um, one of my favourite films ever. And sound swinging Belleville Rendezvous, whatever can what to do. And anyway, so like this is almost like a theme tune that plays throughout the whole music, and then it's the triplets who are playing this jazz, and it opens up with them playing in a black and white thing that eventually goes off, and this cyclist is captured by the French mafia, and the granny basically crosses the ocean to um, find their son, like their grandchild, and then they find the triplets of Belleville, and the triplets are making music with now they're very crazy improvisational jazz where they use a Hoover and a newspaper and a fridge, like and the fridge somehow you can use it as a plucking instrument in this film. I don't think it's entirely realistic, but they've somehow tuned they kind of made music that sounds vaguely like okay, you can half believe that maybe if you were incredibly skilled, that this fridge could make these noises. But it lends the whole film a sense of vibrancy and an energy. And then the follow up to that, which is based in Scotland, I did not enjoy half as much for a variety of reasons. But then I realized that what I really wanted was another film with the same energy, because whilst the original Belleville de Rendezvous was a upbeat, jazzy film, this sequel was like this slow, sad, waltzy thing. And yeah, there's little bits of the animation. There's one section that I felt okay, that was not done terribly brilliantly, but it is definitely a significant character in it. And maybe that's inevitable. I mean, maybe nothing is truly in the background. As soon as you have something, as soon as it starts altering or shifting or intensifying your emotion, maybe if you're being honest, everything is in the foreground to some degree. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, degree. I think degree is the right word there.
Hmm.
Always depends like how much is something in the background or foreground. Also compared to the other things. uh, yeah, compared to the other stuff that's going on. Um, for example, if you got something energetic or some rhythmic music, yeah, and you have a scene where there's not much going on else. For example, in a movie, like two people just looking at each other, in the background there's like this energetic jazz playing. Then you're like automatically shifting your center of attention to the music, probably because the visuals don't provide as much information anymore. But if you got an action scene, I don't know, if you watch Transformers where like there's something exploding every 2 seconds and the camera is going places and whatever, and um, your eyes can't even keep up anymore. And then there's like this kind of jazz playing in the background. It might like dive under the other stuff.
Hmm. I mean, Nicholas is making some really interesting points about diegetic music versus extra diegetic music in films where it's something like you talked about Birdman, where they're playing it as part of the scene, or Triplet de Belleville. It's they're actually, the characters are singing it, and sometimes it's extra diegetic when it's a chase scene and there's no actual music. You don't imagine that there's some band playing this music, but there's something that yeah, and for sure there's some films that have no extra diegetic music, or maybe not even diegetic music at all, and that's it. But that is a conscious choice. And I think the thing is that maybe with board games, it's difficult to package music with the game. It's difficult because it's not like you have something there by default. Sure, you might have an app in the case of Mansions of Madness 2, or some of the other things that we talked about, but typically it's not there. But like it and yeah, that would be hilarious. And I've actually seen for sure things where it's extra diegetic music, but then they kind of try to pretend that it's somehow there, like kind of extra diegetic music that lasts maybe several years. I watched a film, It's About Time. I don't know if you know this film. It's not very good. I wouldn't recommend it. I only watched it because I was in the mood. Look, I had a terrible weekend. I'm not going to get into why, but I did not have the energy to do any work. And I watched this romantic comedy called It's About Time, where there's a time traveler and they use this time travel. Oh my gosh, like they know nothing about the romantic interest. All they know is what they look like. And then they start going through time just to meet up with them. Like that feels really creepy and stalkerish, do you not think? Like if it's like, okay, just because you're attractive, now I'm going to start. Yeah, that feels like a bit much. And anyway, so in one instance, like they get together and then they have this big relationship. It lasts several years, and then the music, and then sometimes the music seems to be coming from a band playing in the London Underground, but still the characters are changing over like what must be like the course of 2 years. It's like one of those scenes where they keep going to the same underground and then the band is somehow miraculously playing the next line of the song. I don't know what, but they kind of pretend like it's diegetic. I mean, I'm glad that you liked it, Alex. So clearly some people, if you might enjoy it, but I just felt it was a little bit, it had sections that I felt were a bit problematic, to be honest. And then, yeah, that's what I'm talking about, where they go in and then they turn off the radio. So it's kind of like you're explaining, oh, this is why this music was from. This is kind of why it's here. But in a game, this kind of makes me think of soundscapes, which is diegetic, versus something that, okay, we're going to play the Indiana Jones theme tune now to this adventure film. Are we going to play that and that, or are we? So do you think that we can draw a parallel between extra diegetic and diegetic music into board games?
Well, I think if music in a board game should be diegetic, and I hope I don't mix it up now, I think the only way to do that is to to have some music in the game itself, right? For example, the game
Swinging
being
Jive
about
Cat Voodoo
entering.
Lounge. I don't know if you know this game. It's set in a
No.
it sweats in a swinging lounge, basically it's set in a bar where they play swing music. Presumably, I guess that's the
Mm.
kinds of music that they would be playing in the reality of this game.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have to have some kind of game reality to add music that is diegetic. So I think that rules a lot of board games out already.
Hmm.
Um,
Bye, Alex. Lovely to have you.
um,
But you can still have like a soundscape, like in a cave, where it's just eerie music that
yeah,
you could sort of imagine. Like if it's wind rustling through things, if it's not like, let's not even pretend it's there's no melody, it's like wind, it's occasional moans, it's like the creaking of the house. That could work for Mansions of Madness.
that could work definitely. But would we still call that background music or background noise?
Hmm.
That's the question. Um, I think stuff like that could work for a lot of games. Um, like I mentioned, like Carcassonne earlier, like with the medieval music, folk music, stuff like that.
Hmm.
Certain instrument that tie into a certain scene, or like in a cave or stuff like that. You can also like create music that tries to replicate certain nature sounds, especially if you don't go melodic, like a flute, for example, imitating that howling sound in a cave,
Hmm.
um, uh, or like an e-guitar playing a really high note for some shrieking noise. But that's again like a question of definition. I think with a lot of that stuff, you end up
Let's
trying to
assume that
define like,
we are including soundscapes and
mm,
background noise as parts of this
yeah,
background music definition.
yeah. In that case, soundscape can definitely add a lot of atmosphere to a game. Um, Also, like, if you, well, the problem is like with a game master or an app that kind of triggers the sounds at the right moment. But if you got something like that in a game, there's also a lot of possibilities, I think, to draw the center of attention of players. For example, if you got background music that stays in the background for most of the game, or a soundscape in a cave, and then I don't know, the players engage a troll sneaking up on them or something like that, and then you wouldn't have to say that or just like pop up a troll figure on the board, but you could also just play the sound and players know, oh, something's going on. What is it? um, but for that, you would have to need someone who triggers the music, and I think that's another question you have to ask yourself when you create background music: is how long does it play, and does it need to change at some point? Is it just adding something to this very um, atmosphere, like the cave with the noises and the soundscape, or do I want a change that signifies something to the players or to the game, and how do I trigger that?
I mean,
Um,
this is where I feel like it would be good to have Jason Hodgson on, because Jason Hodgson, who does do work for me, like maybe 3 hours a week, sorts of thing, basically helping me be marginally more organized than I otherwise would be. Um, and they've been amazing at conventions. They basically helped me for free at conventions for several years. Anyway, so Jason has this thing called Adventurers and Artists, where it's like Dungeons and Dragons, and they actually play Dungeons and Dragons on a stage. So it's like a live play, and then they have recorded these things. And I think it is the only thing in the world where they have live orchestral music to people playing Dungeons and Dragons. So it's not super melodic, but when there's whatever the dungeon master says is happening, they start playing the music, and the violin might start playing. I think it's maybe 4 people in the background. Like So I was sitting in the audience for one of them. In front of you, there's a games master, dungeon master, and maybe 4 people who are playing. And then behind you, there's these 5 people with portable instruments. By portable, I basically mean it's something you can carry with your 2 hands, so not a piano. And then you had like double bass and someone playing, oh, okay, this is kind of creaking noises, and oh, there's a giant coming, so we're going to have music, and like setting the atmosphere, which was brilliant. And getting to that topic of how important is it for these things to properly change? Because if they, I mean, when Nicholas talks about Necrodancer, which is a really interesting idea, and I'm not familiar with this game, and I'd love to give it a go. And I know even in Black and White, where if you zoom from one part of the map to another part of the map, then this soundtrack fades out, this soundtrack fades in, and they use, based on where your character goes, it shifts things. But that's the computer. Your actions actually are directly inputting into the computer. So to do that for a board game, either you need to be telling the computer what you're doing, or you need to have someone in the background who is either playing the instruments or doing some sort of DJing.
That would be nice if some board games just came with your own string quartet that plays in the background. I would buy that.
That would be pretty expensive. You'd have to pay them rent and food as well.
But you're definitely right. There is, I think, how was the game called?
This is like, the biggest board game. These people need like their own bedroom and everything. It needs a lot of storage space.
It does. I mean, you could just throw them out afterwards. Just finish the session and then goodbye. But I think there are some possibilities. I played a game when I was a child. I don't know if it's popular or anything, or if it was like one of these niche games, but it was centered around the King Arthur mythos. You played like knights out on a quest to get some stuff and help King Arthur, collecting these things. Like you had to collect 3 swords by slaying monsters and 3 gold coins by talking to someone, stuff like that. And the whole game, I remember that the board game itself, like the board was really thick, like 2 or 3 centimeters. And there was like electronics in there. And your player character, your figurines, had like some stuff in the base as well. I'm not like a technical guy, so I don't know the details. And when you put your character on a certain field, you could trigger like 4 different commands, I think, on the board by touching your figurine and touching the command buttons. And then that triggered either events happening at that very spot or someone talking to you. And then you could decide, do you want to attack him? Do you want to talk to him? Stuff like that. It was really basic, but for the time back then, it was amazingly done. And I think stuff like that could work as well. Like the game maybe recognizing where your figures are on the board and then changing the music accordingly.
Someone suggests that it is King Arthur by Rainer Knizia. And here's a picture. Don't know if you recognize that box.
It is. Yes, that's the one. Amazing. I haven't seen that box in ages.
And that is the designer, or author, as you would say in German.
Nice.
But Knizia, yeah, definitely worked a lot in this area. And thank you to, I should say, that image is from Board Game Geek, of course, from Eye of the Night, whatever. I don't know their real name, but that is their Board Game Geek username. So thank you for uploading that 17 years ago so that we can now see it today. And that was a photo from 2003 at Spiel when the game was first released, apparently.
Yeah, figures. I think I got it like 2004, 2005. Hmm.
So, for sure, if we have electronics in the actual game, then the game can adapt. And there's things, I think Microsoft or someone was working on something called Teberu, which is, it feels almost like cultural appropriation, just using the Japanese word for table just to make it sound fancy and exotic, if you know what I mean. But
Hmm.
let's not get, having acknowledged it and that it's problematic, let's not try and dissect that. Um, but anyway, so there's also other tables that are actually touch screens, and then you put things on them, or there's some sensor that checks where everything is on this table and he interacts with it somehow. And yeah, there's definitely stuff that, but more and more, this is going to almost A, add expense to the thing, and B, add environmental impact as you add electronics and plastics to everything.
Hmm.
And C, it adds a massive barrier to designers of the game. When previously, if we're saying that, okay, you can just make a tiny deck of cards and say, hey, this is, something that I made and it's cheap to produce. And this is like a game that people might want to actually buy and enjoy. Then to say, okay, now and like Kickstarter has increased the barrier to entry so much, because it used to be that you could come in and say, hey, I've not done any of the artwork, but this is the idea for the game, and still you'd get some people, and you might be able to raise £3,000, and that's enough to print the game. But nowadays, if I were coming, 5 years late, it's 6 years since I did my first Kickstarter. If I were coming today and I approached it like I did my first Kickstarter 6 years ago, I don't know if people would back that. I don't know if people would be willing to support that. Sure, some people who know me personally might, but would anyone else? Because I feel like everyone else would be like, yeah, I don't know if I can trust this person. Everyone's now wanting graphics to already be done. And if we're saying, okay, you need to have your own soundtrack and you need to have all these things, let's not say that all these things are a requirement. Let's still say that, okay, it's just something that maybe if you are able, then maybe you want to consider. Because,
Hmm.
yeah, for sure, adding um, some sorts of thing, adding a YouTube playlist or a Spotify playlist or a Melodice playlist, it doesn't. And I guess I should probably do a little link to that. Um, or, yeah, so if you go to Melodice, that's like here, and then you type in, and if it's Kitty Cataclysm, which is a game that, then I've just put this opera, Duetto Bifi di Due Gatti, which means opera for two cats. And yeah, I did like some things that are vaguely cat related, but this is not really background music, if I'm being honest. This
Hmm.
is like when you've got the Love Cats by The Cure, that's going to be just something that you play and they're like, oh, that's kind of funny, it's cat themed. And yeah, but maybe you set the tone. Maybe that's what it's all about. Just think, hey, here's some things that you play and it can't change, but maybe that's what we do. I don't know. Because we can only do so much.
Yeah, and you also you will never be able to create background music that um, everyone likes or that speaks to everyone in the same way. Um,
Mm,
it's like the first thing that comes to my mind always is like cultural influence, that certain music for us is linked to certain stuff, which is kind of like you said, like it's cultural appropriation a little bit to call that a service like after a Japanese thing to get a certain effect on people. Um, and I think that is done in music all the time. Like you watch a movie where I don't know, like remotely. Um, or a person that could be, for example, Asian appears. I mean, nowadays could be European, could be born fifth generation in the US. You never know that,
Mm.
but immediately, I don't know, some Japanese sounding instruments play a small melody or something, um, or medieval music that is always kind of linked to a certain set of instruments that we're not used to hear, but immediately linked to medieval music. Even though probably in medieval times most people weren't even playing these instruments because they were really, really expensive to build, or they sounded completely different because they didn't have the expertise to build them that way. Um, but that kind of stuff changes, right? I mean, for example, if you watch a movie here that does that stuff, that might work. If you watch it in Japan, it might not work at all because nobody gets it. Why that would be, why someone would put it there. So every choice like that is kind of culturally influenced as well.
I mean, I had this question going for a bit of time, and I think we've talked about music amplifying or changing like your mood, but is there any value in subverting your mood? Like if we do it with intentionality, like if you do have a, I'm trying to think of scary movie like that comedy that's basically all about those horror tropes. Like if we have something similar in board games where you're playing this board game that's meant to be a bit scary, but it's like, hey, we know that this isn't really scary. It's using those 80s tropes, and we're going to have this kind of bad, kind of cheesy music playing. Like, would I don't know, even that's kind of complementing it. Like, could you get any actual cognitive dissonance that is useful, or is it always to be avoided?
For board games or in general with background music?
Um,
Um,
Primarily with board games, but is
hmm,
there any times that you can think of? Because I mean, it's not just about what exists, but what could be.
yeah. Um, I think in board games that could work if there is a change. Like, I mean, first of all, of course, you could have some music that you wouldn't expect, but you play the whole time, and then it kind of becomes a thing for this board game. Um, I have to be reminded of like how um, a lot of futuristic, like the whole synthwave kind of thing, um, was influenced by 80s and 70s music.
Hmm.
Of course, adding like synths to make it like a bit more technical or futuristic, but again, it's like it's basically a um, the difference between like this futuristic and retro music combined, and now it's a thing. Like now if you watch like cyberpunk style movies or stuff like that, and music like that plays, you immediately think it's normal.
Hmm.
And I think you could do that for certain, or kind of for the branding of a board game as well, that if you add music and the music differs from what you would expect, then you kind of get used to it after a while with that specific board game,
So maybe
um,
not
and make
completely
it a thing.
subverting it, but having some motif that stands out.
Hmm.
Like I'm
Yeah, for instance.
reminded of in terms of video games. I don't know if you're aware, Super Mario World. Every single level, all the songs are really reframings of each other. And
Hmm.
Koji Kondo, the composer, did an amazing job with Super Mario World, where every single level you can sort of see those themes coming in and coming back. And sure, it starts in a very binary way. It's not super advanced. It's like the old 16-bit computers, but there's something wonderful there where maybe having those themes coming back in a similar style to, okay, whenever you see Darth Vader, you
Hmm.
hear a little snippet of that Imperial March. Maybe something similar with board games that, I don't know, it could even come with like a sound card or I mean, again, that's the problem with most of these ideas. They just add more and more expense.
Yeah, most definitely. I think the easiest way is to just um, if you at least can afford like the musician putting in the music, put it online. For example, put in a link in the board game. Say like, okay, visit this website to add the music, or to get to a certain playlist on YouTube, for example, and the developers could just or designers could just put up a playlist like that, like on Melodize.
Hmm.
Well,
Like, I mean, so we've already talked about adapting, and it sounds like this is really something that can only happen with technology that doesn't always exist in board games. And this is like a big shortcoming of board games, that unless we decide we are going to embrace that digital, then it won't happen. But let's talk about the fact that, I don't know if you're familiar with, so I'm looking around to see how far away it is for me to grab Chronicles of Crime. It's just 2 meters away, so I don't know if you are familiar with Chronicles of Crime.
no, I'm not.
So I'm going to keep talking. Sorry about this. Oh. So Chronicles of Crime by Lucky Duck Games is a game in which you need to have an app, and inside the game it is obviously get the rule book, you get these things, the board, and the important thing is that on all of the cards you have QR codes. So if you want to go to a new location, you scan the QR code on your phone, and this is like what's in the box. And so there's space that you kind of these things, and then if you during the game it says, okay, find this particular card with this number on it, and then whenever you want to talk to them, you scan the QR code, and then on the app it gives you certain options. So they are already having a lot more expense, and this is forging new ground, so we can't be too harsh on them. But as board games become more and more advanced, and this becomes almost the norm, should we be asking people who are creating app-driven board games to actually focus on to step up and add the expense so that you can have the version that doesn't take too much data? Because I talked to Vince, and I think part of the reason they didn't want to have too long a loop was because they don't want to occupy gigabytes on your mobile phone, essentially, because most of the stuff is text on your mobile phone. But should we say, hey, should we as consumers demand some sort of soundscape for any app-driven game, something that lasts hours?
You can actually loop things in quite an interesting way, so that it doesn't take up too much space, but at the same time feels like it's changing. I watched a video
Procedurally
essay a
driven, you
while
mean?
ago. Yes. Watched a video essay a while ago about adaptive music in video games mostly, where with just a few changes you can change up a piece of music, add a new rhythm, or change the rhythm in a procedural way that people wouldn't even notice, and it's basically you just add like a few things to an already existing track. So there are ways, I think, to get a maximum amount of different tracks of music, or different styles, different atmospheres into like one track that is changing. Only thing then again is, of course, like, when do you decide and how do you decide to change the track? How do you trigger that?
Yeah. I mean, it feels like we've had a really good discussion, and if anyone wants to chime in with any more questions or any more thoughts or comments about this, then please go ahead. I'm going to start wrapping up, but yeah, feel free to bring in stuff. I mean, started talking off topic as we always do, and talks about watering cans, which I love your definition. A watering can is a tool to help you care for something. And this day and age, anything that helps you care for other things is a wonderful thing to behold. Whether it's a mobile phone that allows us to care for those who are far away from us, or the internet, and that's a lovely reason to say that watering can is brilliant. We talked about Mozart and how Amadeus is not even part of their name, and Amadeus, and being unusual. We talked about Carcassonne, about Betrayal, about Mansions of Madness, about King Arthur, Space Alert, Escape the Dark Castle, Escape the Dark Sector, Escape from Temple. We talked about intention. We talked about what is the focus. We talked about complementing the music. We talked about listening to the world around you sometimes. We talked about the nature of what is music, about whether it has to have a melody. We talked about, you know, that diegetic versus extra diegetic stuff. That's very occasionally there might be a board game. I mean, let's imagine there was a Star Wars board game and it was sent into Cantina, you know, Mos Eisley. That would be pretty cool. And maybe you'd have those. I mean, to be fair, like the way that board games are made, I know like this would be licensed, and then they would have to pay extra to license that particular piece of music. And you know, it would cost too much. They wouldn't be able to do it, let's be honest. But you know, you could have some sorts of cantina music, maybe. But most of it is going to be extra diegetic unless you come to what we are calling soundscape. But maybe everyone, even if you aren't able to maybe have any music that actually shifts and adapts to what we're playing, like a video game can, feels like having something just to say, hey, this is me telling you what kind of environment I, as the designer, feel like this game should be played in. And it's kind of almost showing bits of extra love and care. And the fact that, yes, Chronicles of Crime does have this soundscape behind it, that you do hear this wishing, and I cannot imagine playing that with any extra music playing on my hi-fi. I would want Chronicles of Crime blasting out, and even though it's, you know, just this, it kind of feels atmospheric, and occasionally there's a drum beats, and occasionally there's like, but yeah, to intensify that emotion, and just to say this is, because a good game, to my mind, is a game that tells people this is a sort of experience you are going to have, and it meets those expectations whilst still having a few surprises along those way. So the way, but those surprises can come from the game itself, and having that music can help you in setting those expectations for sure, even if it's just, hey, here's a bunch of songs on Melodice or YouTube playlists or Spotify or whatever, kind of saying, hey, check this out if you want some background stuff. Do you have anything to add in terms of the recap wrap up before we call it morning?
I don't think so, actually. You wrapped it up nicely.
Well, thank you very much. If you want to, so I'm just going to look at the thing and copy paste the links into the chat. So if you are on YouTube, it should be long term on the description, same in Facebook, but I'm just sharing it for good measure. Those are it is actually covering most of the screen. There we go. But check out Amadeus on Twitch. Tell people when you're playing or whatever.
So usually I'm playing on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 11 a.m. GMT +1, so that would be 10 a.m. UK time. With the occasional stream every now and then.
And unfortunately, that does clash with my 10 a.m. UK time till 12 p.m. till noon UK time. But afterwards, you know, check out Amadeus, and you know, definitely there's a bunch of lovely music, and I would say like more stuff from apart. Like if you put it onto your own originals, and like puts it onto your song list. But I did love the waiting for Rob improvisations that you had last time.
Well, glad you
Um,
liked it.
I think it was literally the first time that I've laughed, not just because of someone in my chat kind of making a joke, which I'm very fortunate to occasionally have people try to make me laugh, and which I really love about Twitch because it is such a community. And I know Xates
Yeah.
comes in here and says, "Oh, whenever I make Bez laugh and get Bez to be distracted, it's like I win a point," and that is the game that they play. But yeah, there was this song that Amadeus played that was basically waiting for Rob and about how we're waiting 2 minutes for Rob, and then in this anyway, it was a. But if you want to check me out, stuffforbeds.com, stuffforbeds.bigheart.com if you want to buy my stuff, and you can buy my print and play games for only like 50 pence until the end of lockdown, until the world goes back to normal. So if you like word games, or if you like chaotic games about cats, and the word games you can play with just one person, and a chaotic game about cats you can need to play with two people minimum, I would say. But yeah, that's on stuffforbeds.bigcardell.com, twitter.com/stuffforbeds, instagram.com/stuffforbeds for pictures, obviously, twitch.tv/stuffbybez, where I stream every day at 10 a.m. UK time for a couple of hours, and 8 p.m. UK time on Tuesdays, youtube.com/stuffbez for the old shows, and stuffbybez.com/discord, where you can see all the things. And I want to say a massive thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone who's watching. I hope you have enjoyed this. And thank you to Amadeus for joining me. It has been lovely to having you.
Well, thank you for having me. Has been an interesting conversation.
And now it's over to you. What are you up to? You can share anything only if you want to. So tell me something that you're looking forward to, maybe a hope or ambition. Share anything you want. Be aware that it is in a public space, obviously, but share anything exciting, trivial, or important, or just fun. And I am going to share that Chris comes over on Wednesdays to help me out. It's just really such a lovely thing. For those who don't know, I am self-publishing games, which, like so much of everything, is marketing, which kind of feels incredibly sad sometimes, but it's just the nature of the world. You can't just make your things and away we go. But lots of that, I'm like, okay, now we do this, and yeah, let's play test things together. That's actually the fun parts that we sometimes get to do. Or I write rules, and then Chris reads the rules and tries to play, and then I realize how terrible the rules are. But Chris is getting too good at reading the rules, so I need to find some people who are worse at games so that they can misinterpret my rules more easily. And Scott says they are looking forward to continuing an online game of Pericles this evening. That sounds fun. And hello, Watchtower. Just we're wrapping up, so let us know what you're up to, but please keep all the chat respectful, obviously. What are you up to, Amadeus?
Well, today I'm looking really forward to cooking, of course. As I said earlier, that's like a thing me and my girlfriend do every single day. And it's just like this island of 2 hours in the day where you can just relax a bit, talk a bit, and forget about all the stuff that has to be done still. And in the long run, on Saturday, the 24-hour stream that I don't know why I agreed to do this, but I did, and now I'm into it. And we'll see how
It's
that
because
goes.
you hit your favorite number?
Yes, almost. Well, like 919 it was. Yes, 19 is my favorite number, so I figured it's like 2 9s and 19.
919.
Yes. Okay.
I mean, it's got a nice kind of symmetry to it. And so, yeah, that's exciting. So there'll be apparently yoga and music, and definitely pop in after our chat. And yeah, it'll be lovely to see you. That's going to be tough, I think, Watchtower is saying. Yeah, but yeah, but all the best with it.
Thank you so much.
And um, if you want to check out my future streams, then look at stuffbabez.com/streams, which will redirect you to a Google Calendar where you can see that tomorrow I am chatting with Dina, who is a marketing specialist, all about brand management. On Friday, I am excited to be chatting for the first time with Paul Grogan, who is very well known in the industry. They are like one of the best rules writers in board games. And so we will be learning all about how to write clear rules and hopefully not being like rules writing 101, although I'm sure we'll kind of go over like Paul's very big on saying they in rules like being gender neutral as opposed to, sorry to pick on Germans, but there are some terrible rules where because of German being very gendered in terms of its language, and it really annoys me that as soon as some German, I'm not having a go at you, you understand, but like there's lots of German board games that they say he, where they assume that all the board game players are he. And this is a big issue, I believe. And I don't think that it should still be, because it is like a microaggression that can turn off people that don't identify as male. And anyway, this is one of those things that could be a conversation in of itself, but we'll really chat about that, the structure, the kind of way that you balance and clarity. Anyway, and then so there's streaming every day. And so if you've enjoyed this, then share, spread the word. And I'm going to have a quick look at who we might maybe raid whilst Amadeus tells you anything else that they would like to shout out about, or maybe talks more about your 24-hour stream.
Don't have that much else to say. Well, for the 24-hour stream, there's going to be a lot of fun stuff. Music. There's going to be some special guests. It's not going to be only music. There's only some games in there. And I just had like the thought, like, we should have put some board games in there. We could still do that. I've got like 4 hour spots still open. Why not play some board games with the viewers?
Yeah, I've got some games that work with the L deck that you could. I could set if you were actually up for playing some word games. I could send you a nice print and play, and because there are some simple games that you can, then everyone joins in. Because I've been doing that since March. I want to say every. Yeah, we kind of do these word games, but ooh, and hello, Kiefer Kala 420. I'm sorry you're joining us just as we're about to finish off. I'm going to read UK Games Expo because this is if you want more board game chats, then UK Games Expo is the UK's biggest board game convention. They normally have 20,000 people. Obviously, this year that was not the case. There was no physical convention. But yeah, they are streaming every Wednesday. It's a new thing for them. They don't have many people, but today they are chatting to a media channel and a board game shop, I believe. So let's raid there if you want to hear more about board games. So there is only one thing left to do. And so, again, thank you, everyone. And that one thing left to do is to say bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.